Hello and welcome to the Extremis Publishing Podcast. I'm Tom Christie. Nothing speaks more of Scotland than its tourism and hospitality industries, and I'm sure wherever you're listening to this, you'll automatically have images in your mind of mountains, streams, and amazing communities all the way throughout Scotland. And who better to talk to about Scotland and tourism than the Association Manager of the Scottish Tourist Guides Association, Gillian Barrett, who's very kindly agreed to have a chat with us today about the work of the STGA. So thank you so much, Gillian, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So what can you tell us about the STGA's role in Scotland today? Because it's a very wide-ranging organisation that really covers the whole country.
Yeah, it does. We have over 500 members across Scotland, and those are 500 working tourist guides, really stretching all the way up to Shetland. So it's a range of characters with lots of different backgrounds, but what unites them is they're all really passionate about Scotland and they want to share that.
Because the amazing thing about Scotland is that, there's so much in the way of cultural heritage that is so wildly different throughout different parts of the country. It seems to me that your organisation is perfectly situated to make the most of all of those different variations.
Yes, and so as an organisation, we're a membership organisation. Our members are tourist guides, but we also offer training courses. So one of our training courses for the Blue Badge qualification, it takes 18 months to do, and that's because they are learning about all the different regions and cultures of Scotland, and they're gaining core knowledge and guiding skills. So quite often when people say, oh, how long is your course? And you say it's 18 months, and people go, oh my goodness, but it's because they have to learn about all those little things about Scotland that people don't realise. So it's very wide ranging, and it takes a lot of time. However, once our guides do graduate from the course, they've all got their specific interests. So you don't need to know everything about Scotland all the time, but as trainers, it's really important that we give them that opportunity.
Yeah, because it's such an amazing responsibility, isn't it? Showcasing Scotland to perhaps people who've never been here before and are experiencing it for the first time. What kind of skills do your guides learn in their initial training, and what different levels of training are there?
Well, it's interesting because in most other European countries, being a tourist guide is actually regulated, but in the United Kingdom and Scotland, it's not regulated. So anyone can go out there and be a tourist guide. We have been around for about 60 years, and the reason that we wanted to do a professional accreditation is so that people, when they come to visit Scotland, know that they're getting a real expert. They have that knowledge, and they're not just making up stories about different places you're going to in Scotland, but they're also trained on guiding skills. So that includes, it could be everything from first aid to any emergencies that might happen, how to deal with coach drivers, or if you're a driver guide, how to deal with really busy places and dealing with crowds. So it's the very practical skills as well of how you handle groups and anything that can happen. So they do need to be prepared. I would say that is the main thing I've learned working here and learning about our guides is the amount of preparation they put in, and just looking at all different angles. What can go wrong? How can I manage this group? How can I manage the personalities in it? So it's really about preparation and not just going out there and hoping for the best.
Yeah, because that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? Improvisation and that sense of being able to really think on your feet. That's one thing that's very difficult to learn. It's something that comes with experience. How do the guides deal with that? Is it just something that comes with time?
So on our courses, they go through numerous assessments, and they have to pass those assessments to be able to do the final exam. And so they're assessed on everything by their manner, how they deal with things that might pop up, like roadworks or a coach breaking down, as well as their general knowledge about the different regions of Scotland too. So we do assess them. We've got a training team, and as I say, with the Blue Badge course, which is to become a guide across Scotland, it's 18 months. It's not full time. They're doing it on the weekends and in evenings, but they have mentors, and we've got a training manager and a course director, and they're watching them all the time and giving them feedbacks and notes. So our training is really rigorous. That's why a lot of people do it, because people within the industry know if you're a blue badge guide, if you're a member of the STGA, you've gone through really rigorous assessments. And so there are a lot of companies out there that will only hire our guides because they know that they can deal with anything that might pop up, and that they've really been through it with us as well during their training.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I'm sure many people will instantly associate with the STGAs, the different colours of badges that your guides have. What can you tell us about that?
So the main one is the Blue Badge Guide, which as I say is across Scotland, and they have that in London, and in different places, including Ireland as well. And then we've got our Green Badge, which is regional, and we mainly use that for the North East, the North Highlands, Orkney, and Shetland. So people there are training just for that specific region. It works quite well up there because, as you can imagine, there's probably a lot of guides, Shetland and Orkney, that they're not going to come to Edinburgh or Glasgow for a job. They're getting enough work up there. So they're trained for that specific region. Whereas our Blue Badge course is for all over Scotland. They can work anywhere and they're insured throughout the country as well. And the Blue Badge is really something that was inspired by the work that was being done in London about 60 years ago, and it was the Scottish Tourist Board that wanted to follow suit.
Do you find that there are any particular areas of the country that are especially popular for tour guiding, or is it something that really is quite equally distributed right the way through the country?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Edinburgh is hugely popular. I think that's the area where we have the most members. In our association, we also have member branches throughout the country, and our Edinburgh and South East branch has got the most membership. Glasgow as well is becoming hugely popular, but people also, they want to go up north. They want to do the tours of the castles there, of the different whiskey distilleries, and of course golf. But we find, our guides on the islands in Orkney, they're working too continuously, and especially with cruise ships now stopping throughout Scotland, that's really changed the work that's out there and the demand.
Yeah, because that's really opened things up, hasn't it? The whole issue of how Scotland itself is perceived, the cultural heritage, and all these other aspects as well, the culture, the literature, the music even. Do all of these different elements play a part in how guides approach the subject of Scotland?
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of the time the client will come to them and say, I want to go on an ancestral tour, or I want to go on a golf tour, and they'll give them that direction. And then it's up to our guides and their training to prepare for that. But certainly, Scotland has, people want to come to Scotland and they want to learn about the stories, they want to learn about the history, they want to learn about how life was and continues to be in some parts. I think Scotland has a great history of storytellers, and what we do is we want to continue that, we want to offer that, but also make sure that they're professional too, and people are leaving Scotland having had a fantastic experience and they want to come back again.
Yeah, that's such an important point actually, because I've spoken myself to people from North America, from Australia and New Zealand, who have Scottish ancestry, who are fascinated by life in Scotland, both in the present and in the past. What would you say to people like that who are looking to come across to Scotland? There is so much to recommend the country, but what would you say are the key areas that they might want to find out more about?
Well, of course I'm going to say use one of our guides. It's our association, but what I will say is, especially if they're coming to look for ancestors. I know one of our guides recently had a family from America, and they very specifically wanted to find out a lot of stuff, and she planned a whole tour, extended tour, where they were going to different libraries, they were going to different churches, and they were finding that information so that by the time they left after 2 weeks or so, they had found the information that they wanted. Whereas that's quite a challenge to do that by yourself. So when you do hire a tourist guide, it's not maybe, as people might imagine, just to show you around a castle or holding a flag and going down a busy street. But if you have a goal, if you have a dream that you want to come back to Scotland and find something out about your ancestors, that's something they can help you with too. And they can drive you round and they can get you to all the places, and they can put the whole tour together for you so that it's a really smooth experience, because sometimes finding out this information, although we do have lots of resources online, it's having someone in your corner to help you and make that much more straightforward, and that's what guides can do as well.
Well, Scotland's a kind of place that has many, many different cultural connections. I think of those Celtic connections to places like Wales and Ireland, to the Nordic countries as well, with the connections there. And of course, most famously, with Scottish societies throughout the United States and Canada. What kind of connections does STGA foster with those overseas communities?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we are very close to our other associations in the United Kingdom. So along with in London, they have a guild of professional tourist guides, Northern Ireland and Wales, and we are part of FEG, which is the Federation of European Guides, and WFTGA, which is the World Federation Tourist Guide Association. So we work really closely with all these partner associations so we can understand what's going on with our colleagues throughout the world. And of course, our biggest market really are people coming from the United States and North America, but we do get a huge amount of people coming from Europe and the Nordic countries. So I think being part of these wider associations is really beneficial for us, because we can learn about what other countries are doing, how they've lobbied for their guides over there, and trends that they're seeing with visitors as well. And that was all hugely helpful in setting up this association, in our training standards, and also when you have challenging periods like COVID, to understand what's going on in Europe and the wider world.
Yeah, because that's a really interesting point, actually. When you look at the Far East and the great interest that many countries over there have in Scotland and in Scottish culture, and I was amazed because it's everything from whiskey to tablet. You know, you even hear about some countries in the Far East who've built their own replica Scottish communities. Do you ever have representatives from these countries coming over here for information about guiding?
Yeah, so we have actually in the past, I haven't in some time, but Scotland did host, I believe it was the World Federation of Tourist Guides, their big AGM, but we always have a representative from our association go to the European Federation and the World Federation's annual general meetings. So we have a representative for FEG and a representative for WFTGA within our association, and they are responsible for going to all the events and connecting with those individuals. But, you know, within our membership, say we've got about 500 members, within that we've got, I think it's 22 different languages spoken, and they're not all Scottish people. They're people who have moved to Scotland from Japan, from China, from Germany, from Denmark. And so we've got a huge amount of guides who now call Scotland their home, and they offer guided tours of Scotland in different languages, and they come with their connections to those countries as well. So we really work closely with our members to ensure that we've got good connections throughout the world. And I think that's what tourist guides are as well, actually. They're ambassadors for our country.
That's a really wonderful thing, actually, is that every single tour guide will have their own individual interests and their own individual approach to the subjects that they're talking about. What would you say is the key advice that you're giving someone when they're first expressing an interest in becoming a tour guide?
Well, that you do have to put the effort in, because it isn't, as I say we go with the Blue Badge course, it is an 18-month course, and you're doing written examinations, you're out on site examinations, and you do need to be able to take the feedback. So we get a lot of different people want to become guides, and they're really established professionals from a range of different backgrounds, like I said before, and you're having to really start afresh and learn something new. So it's about being open, and it's about being able to deal with lots of different people, because we're obviously getting groups, range of cultures, range of expectations. When you're a guide, you know, it can be really good, and then it could be really challenging if you've got a difficult group. So when we're looking at who's going to join our course, we are looking for people who are willing to learn, but are also adaptable as well and flexible, because it can go really well, and then things can go really badly out on tour too. So you have to be open to that. But I think that's what's fantastic about it. You get people coming in, they've got that passion for Scotland, they love meeting people, they want to be outside, and they're willing to learn something new, which I think is always an amazing thing.
So if you're based in Scotland and you operate perhaps an area that is of specific tourist interest, or perhaps of great cultural heritage interest, how would you go about booking the services of a member of the STGA?
Well, previously we used to have a booking service, so we used to have a booking agent here that would take bookings for us. When COVID hit, we just couldn't do that anymore, and obviously that was a really hard time for our industry. And we haven't returned to do that service yet because all our members, they're their own little businesses in themselves. They're all self-employed, or they're employed by different businesses. We are here to train them and to advocate for them and to promote them. But they do go out there and then they find those connections for their business themselves. But when people reach out, obviously, to us all the time, and they normally give us a specific location they want to go to, their specific interests, their dates, and we can use that information to filter and find the right guide for them out of 500 people. So we do try and assist them. We don't book guides for them anymore, but on our website, all our guides are listed. And as I say, you can find them by their interest and their availability and where they live.
Well, that's a really admirable thing, because it's come through in so many of the things that you've said today, is that there is so much emphasis on empowering guides and building their confidence, and really making sure that the experience that they are giving to visitors to Scotland is the best possible that it can be, and yet also that everyone is going to have their own entirely unique way of doing things.
And to be part, I will say, of our association as a member, we do have a code of conduct. We've got standards. There is a complaint procedure, so it doesn't happen very often, but if a tour operator or a client has a complaint about one of our guides, they send that to us, and it is investigated by a committee from our board of directors. So when you are a member of the association, you do have a code of conduct that you have to understand, and we will investigate complaints. So I think that's why some businesses use our guides as well, because they know they've been professionally trained, but they know that they've got someone to talk to if they haven't been happy with the service or the actions of the guide. And it's really interesting because before this podcast I was like, I better do some studying of our of our association, and one of our members, Alistair Northrop, wrote a book about the history of the Scottish Tourist Guide Association. And in the beginning they said, there was people that wanted guided tours of cities from like 1846, and in London in around just after World War II, people were writing and saying, we really need a register of tourist guides in this city. So there's not imposters, so people aren't duped, so that they have a good experience when they're here. And they said, a tourist guide should be a guide, a philosopher, and a friend to the person visiting the city. And I thought that really stuck with me as well, because that's why this association was started. It's so that we can advocate for our guides, but it's also so that people, when they come to the country, know that they're getting a professional guide, a philosopher, a storyteller, and a friend, and they're not being, duped.
Yeah, and I mean that is so important, because I know from my own experiences of having spoken to STGA guides throughout the country, I've always been hugely impressed by the breadth of their knowledge, but also their determination to keep everything up to date. Because some, if you were cynical, might think matters of history are never going to change, but in actual fact, nothing could be further from the truth. Mm-hmm. There's always new facts emerging. There's always new cultural heritage issues coming to light that are of interest to people. And your guides always seem to be very much at the forefront of knowing all of these facts.
Yeah, we have a continued professional development scheme, and it's not mandatory, but a huge amount of our members do it. And, those continued professional development opportunities are going out on tours. I know last week or 2 weeks ago, they went to the Highlands Safari up in Aberfeldy, and so they're always looking for new information. And as you say, history just doesn't stay the same. People are always researching it and looking at different points of view. So I think our guides you know, it makes sense for them as professionals and business owners to be really good at what they do, but they also have an interest in it. They're also keen to keep learning.
So, if you are listening at home and you'd like to find out more about the STGA and their work, and also how you can find out more about the guiding system that they have, how can people find out online
Yeah.
and via social media?
So online, our website is stga.co.uk, and really if you search Scottish Tourist Guides Association, we come up quite quickly. And we've got different tabs, but one of those says courses, and it'll give you information about when our next blue badge course begins, when our next green badge course begins, but it's also got our contact information there. And in the office is myself, Sarah and Katrina, and we respond quite often to that. Sometimes you'll have people that reach out, they're not sure if they want to do it this year or next year, but they just want to start having those discovery conversations, and that's what we're here for.
And do you have a social media presence as well?
Yes, we're also on Instagram and Facebook, and it's really nice to go on there too, because you actually see what it's like to be a guide, and how you get to be out in Scotland, rain or shine. You're not stuck behind a desk like I am in my job, and what a wonderful profession it can really be. And it's a career as well. I think that's what people don't realise. You know, you can make a wonderful career out of it and make friends from all over the world. And in fact, we have quite a lot of guides who not only do they guide in Scotland, but they've gained qualifications in England and in Ireland. One of our board of directors, Mariangela, she lives in Venice, and she's an accredited guide there, and she's also an accredited guide in Scotland. She comes over here for the summer seasons. So you can the world, you know, you can go out there and be a guide in lots of different places. It's a great community.
Well, Gillian, thank you so much for having joined us today and for sharing your thoughts about what is a really fascinating and increasingly vital organisation which showcases all the very best of Scotland and much further afield. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So if you're interested in finding out more about the Scottish Tourist Guiding Association, do please check out the website and the social media links, and you will certainly find an organisation that is always changing, always adapting to new challenges, and always welcoming new people to this amazing land of Scotland. Thanks so much for having listened today. I do hope that you'll tune in again soon.